What is up? It's me, again, with another video. You already know what time it is. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Support my career, guys. Help me blow up. You know what? Maybe I'll make a TikTok or something. I'll become a streamer, better yet. All right, all jokes aside, hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing wonderful. Today, it's getting a little bit nasty. We're talking about the Black Plague. Gross. Okay, nobody likes being sick, but none of us have been as sick as people during the plague. That was like next level. So we're gonna talk about it. Where did it come from? What was it? How long did it last? All that good stuff. So go ahead and take out your notes. Okay, we're gonna take a little bit of notes and then we're gonna move on and I'm gonna set you loose. All right, so make a new title. The Bubonic Plague. B-U-B-O-N-I-C. The Bubonic Plague. Welcome to pause me, okay? Rewind me, pause me, anything you need. Bubonic Plague. B-U-B-O-N-I-C. All right. So, first things first, you may know a little bit about the plague, okay? First of all, a plague, right, when you think about like the 10 plagues of Egypt, they're not good, okay? Plagues are never good. But the plague is also called the Black Plague sometimes. It's also called the Black Death other times in Europe as well. If something's called the Black Death, probably not good, right? It's associated with a very high mortality rate, meaning that the people who get it often die. They're not living through the plague. There are some people who are infected with the plague and do live. So let's write down how long the plague lasted. So I want you to put in your notes the first outbreak of the plague, okay, lasted from 1346 to 1353. All right, 1346 to 1353. All right. So this plague comes at a time when most people, especially, it kills a lot of people around the world, but it kills the most people in Europe. So I'm gonna pause the video, or I can't pause the video, but I want you to pause the video in a moment, but I want you to tell me, why do you think this plague was so much deadlier in Europe than it was other places? Okay? Go ahead and pause me. Give me your thoughts. All right, welcome back. I hope it was a good discussion. Okay, so here's some things that I thought of. Number one, people generally lived pretty close to one another. All right, people lived right on top of each other. And so that meant that transmission of diseases would be extremely easy. Also, as you know, personal hygiene, not a thing. Soap did not exist. People bathed maybe twice a year. Okay, think about that. All right, I mean, you think people stinky now. You don't even know. We can't even imagine how smelly people would be. Okay, also, no sewage systems in Europe. So you gotta poop, you poop in a pot, and then you throw the pot, ideally in a hole in the ground. But there were some people, especially in cities, who would just chuck their chamber pot waste out the window. And so it would just accumulate on the streets, and so the streets would be full of human waste. That meant that there were lots of rats, okay? And they would come and eat trash, waste, decomposed bodies, all kinds of things. I know it's very gross, so, sorry if you just got done eating lunch. I don't know, drink some water, okay? It's gonna get nasty. So a disease like this would spread rampantly in Europe because of these conditions, okay? So I hope that makes sense to you. All right, now I want you to write down underneath those years for the bubonic plague. The plague originates in eastern China, okay? So this plague Actually, I'll give you a second. After you write down that it's spread from eastern China, it's spread from the Silk Road. Sorry. My bad. It spread through the Silk Road. So traders who were going from China into the Middle East, all right, they would infect people in the Middle East. They would take it to the Byzantine Empire, and then people who were trading with Europe would take that plague with them there. So that's how it spread. Now, I want you to think, you probably know what animal carried the plague. People know it's rats, right? Everyone says, plague rats. Yep, they did carry the plague, but it's actually... Oh, I'm so sorry. My bad, guys. I'm locked out mentally, but I'm locking in right now. It wasn't just the rats. The rats had fleas, all right? So think about this. Fleas are tiny, 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 and most people had fleas, okay, because you're dirty. So these fleas would bite the rat. They're actually the carrier of the disease. They would bite the rat and infect the rat, okay? That rat, would crawl someplace and die, and then things would eat the rat, and now they have the disease. Animals could get the plague as well, and many of them would die of the plague, but the fleas would carry the blood, okay? So let's say a flea bit a rat, got the plague, and then carried it to a human and bit the human would get the plague. The plague still exists, by the way. It is curable with antibiotics now. You can cure it relatively easily. There was a guy in America that had the plague just maybe 5 years ago, I think. It's very curable. Oh. But not back then. Back then, extremely deadly, very, very high mortality rate, and they really did not know what was causing it or how to cure it. All right, so it comes from eastern China. I want you to write down, spreads through the Silk Road into the Byzantine Empire. So spreads through the Silk Road into the Byzantine Empire, and then is then spread to Western Europe. Feel free to pause me and rewind me. Okay? Spread through the Silk Road into the Byzantine Empire, then spread into Western Europe. So these rats would hide on trade ships that were carrying cargo into Western Europe. They'd unload the cargo, rats would crawl off, bite things and eat things and get bitten by fleas, and those fleas would bite humans, then humans would pass it to other humans, and yada, 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 and now you have this huge apocalyptic event. So I really want you to be thinking about the plague as this was so we think we've lived through a really bad pandemic, right? And in a lot of ways it was. Many people died. I had family members die, and it's awful. But it is nothing compared to what the plague would be. The plague killed roughly 35% of Europe. Sometimes 40 is the estimate. Now I want you to think if 35% of America died. You might not think that's very much. That is a significant amount of the population. 35% of Europe dies from the plague. And they die pretty quick. The plague kills very fast. People who are infected with the plague would feel totally fine when they're infected, and then within an hour, they might have a fever that is literally, they can't bring it down at all. Most of the time, people just die from the fever. A lot of people don't even make it to the stage where you get the buboes because the fever just kills them. It's so intense. So it's a horrible, horrible illness. Okay. So in Western Europe, I want you to write this down. In Western Europe, how do I phrase this? Say, in Western Europe, disease spread rapidly or quickly because of lack of hygiene. In Western Europe, disease spread rapidly because of lack of hygiene. All right? Everything was gross. And also, people were already pretty sick. There were people with pre-existing conditions that would make it pretty difficult to, live if you got the plague. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, dude, I'm trying. Literally, they're like sneaking up on me and like just getting me. I'm sorry, guys. If I'm making you yawn, I apologize. All right. I'm trying to give you time to write. I'm trying not to talk too much. Okay. Hopefully this is making sense for you. Okay. So, let's talk about the different types of the plague. There are 3 types. All right? The first one that I want you to write down is the pneumonic plague. All right? Here is how you spell this. Let me double check. Are you ready? Pneumonic. I'll do it again. Pneumonic. All right. The pneumonic plague was a strand of the plague that was like pneumonia. So think of it as like an upper respiratory illness, okay? It is fatal if it's not treated within 24 hours. And this is, you get it from like inhaling the virus from people's, spit and saliva and all kinds of stuff. This is where people would like cough up. This is pretty gross. The coughs were so intense that they would cough up like, basically like, congealed blood from their lungs. Like it would be like jelly. I know it's really nasty. Okay, it's horrible. And I mean, people would sound like they're literally coughing up their innards. Okay, not literally like their entire heart or something like that. But I mean, it's pretty gross. This was a very common strand. This was the most common strand, but it's not the most famous one. So underneath that, I want you to put bubonic plague. Okay, this is the one that is the most famous. Obviously, it's remembered as the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague is different than the pneumonic plague. They're both the same disease, but the bubonic plague, the symptoms are different. It's kind of like with COVID, some people got like different weird strands. This strand causes the outbreak of what are called buboes. And I want you to write that underneath bubonic plague. Buboes, buboes. A bubo was it would be like a big sore, okay? And really what it is a pustule like boil, and it would fill with pus and bile, but the skin would die, and so it would turn black. So these people had like big black sores that were full of pus. It's really disgusting. Some people would have them in their mouths, like inside their mouths, in their throats, and these boils wouldn't generally like fill enough to pop, but part of the idea was like you had to manually pop them so that they thought that would stop the spread of the disease, but actually by doing that, by making them burst or just throwing the disease in the air, they didn't know, okay? This is what a lot of people remember about the plague. They remember these people walking around with big bumps on them. And again, remember this is all in the context of like people believing in witches and demons and all kinds of things like that. And now you have this disease that is like the most deadly thing anyone's ever seen, and it's making people, break out in black sores. How do you explain that? It becomes very difficult to explain for many people, for most people, right? They're going to explain it with religion, like they explain everything else. Well, it's God punishing us, or someone else is doing it to us. They don't know how to explain it. All right, the last one I want you to write down is the septicemic plague. All right, so let me spell that for you. SEPTICEMIC, septicemic plague. Okay? So this one is probably the worst, all right? To be totally honest. Basically, this one causes what's called necrosis. So have you ever seen frostbite before? Like people's fingers will like turn black. That's called necrosis. It's where your limbs actually die. People who got the septicemic plague, it would cause their limbs, typically their noses actually, would turn black and they would literally rot off of their face. So instead of getting these sores that were like patches of skin rotting, it would target things like appendages or ears or the nose or feet, lips a lot of the time, and they would literally just rot off of their face. It would also cause intense vomiting, diarrhea. It is extremely fatal, okay? But I want to just make this point. If the plague was this widespread for this amount of time, that means that the people that lived probably had it at some point. I've been sick before, and I felt pretty bad. I've never felt this bad, though. I mean, people live through the plague. There are people that get it and like just tank it and live through it because there's not really any medicine. There's natural herbal medicines, but they don't really know how to treat the plague. There's not really any way to treat the plague. So I really want you to be thinking about this plague as really an apocalyptic event for medieval Europe. People thought this was the end of the world. This was the end of civilization. They're like, we are getting killed by God. It's a pretty dark time. I don't say this lightly. When you look at, is this the worst time to be alive? Are we living in the worst time in the world? No, because that's the worst time in the world. I would rather live in pretty much any other time period. But the Black Plague, no thanks. Y'all take that one. I'm good. I don't want any buboes. I don't want any part in that. So as bad as things are, let's just be thankful you ain't got to worry about your nose falling off and turning black and your fingers falling off. I'd be very sad if my fingers fell off because I couldn't play guitar or do anything like that. I just have nubs. And I don't know, maybe I'd be a boxer or something. That would work. Okay, enough of that. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm not going to talk about stuff falling off and gross stuff anymore. So I'm going to let you do what you need to do. I hope you're doing fantastic. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you again for all your work. And catch you in the next one. Peace.